Hey everybody, welcome to day 44 of spiritual healthcare. Day 44, nuts. We are nearly at day 50, which is crazy. It is good to be here this morning. We've got so much to discuss. Had an interesting conversation yesterday that kind of spawned this idea that I have for this morning's classes, and I'm really excited about it. So welcome everybody. It's nice to see you all. It's May 3rd. It is May 3rd. Can you believe it's May 3rd already? And being that it's May 3rd, it is National Paranormal Day. National Paranormal Day. Good morning, Jason. Good morning, Patricia. Good morning, everybody. It is good to see everyone. Good morning, Will. Happy National Paranormal Day, you guys. This is so cool. It is, it's like the perfect day to be doing spiritual healthcare. Good morning, Dan. Nice to see you. It is always good to see everybody logging in the morning. And the fact that, it's National Paranormal Day. I hope you guys enjoyed, or at least those of you who are in America, enjoyed Paranormal 911 last night. I have no idea which episodes are airing in the US. We've already aired them in Canada, so I have no idea what's going on in the States. So, so I'm glad, but I'm hearing good things. I'm hearing really good things, and I'm really glad you guys are enjoying the new season. Good morning, Marge and Jan and Christopher. Nice to see you all. It's noon where Christopher is. It is 10 a.m. where I am right now, and the clouds are kind of rolling in. We're supposed to get rain later this afternoon and this evening, but we'll see. It's National Hug a Ghost Day, as Will is saying. That's what it should be. Is National Hug a Ghost Day. I think he's right. It's so funny because our National Paranormal Day, people have different connotations when it comes to paranormal. And the one thing that I wanted to chat about today, which I thought would be pretty cool, is the use of things like language. Good morning, Laura. How are you? It's good to see you. If Richard is there, I will say hello to him as well. It was good to see. Richard had a really great interview that's now posted in our group, Entity Seekers, Ghost Enthusiasts. Richard is my co-host of Haunted Hospitals and Paranormal 911, and just like all around, both of you people are amazing people, and I'm so glad to be friends with you both. So this is really great. I want to talk to everybody today about, as I say, the idea of language and how we use our language and our speaking in not only within hauntings but within our own inner dialogue and how we frame things. Because I've been noticing a lot of language, catastrophic language, dramatic language, and things like that online, on Facebook, and how people are discussing a lot of this stuff. So I want to get into that today and how it affects our views and our shaping even the haunting phenomenon within our space. So it's really, I think it's a really important subject, especially right now with so much happening where, people are dealing with the pandemic, they're dealing with job loss, they're dealing with all of these things. And, when I'm dealing with clients, what's interesting is that the way that they speak, how they word things, really does have a massive outcome or influence on the outcome of how their story really ends up going. It's so interesting because we can go back to some really deep grassroots about language, and even how it plays effect on our health, how we're wording, when we get sick, all of that kind of thing. It all makes a big difference. So I want to be able to chat about that today, and how we can start to look at that, what that clear communication is, and what it is with both each other and non-physical as well, because our communication with non-physical is such a big deal, and it starts with us. It starts in our heads. We have like thousands and thousands of thoughts, tens of thousands of thoughts a day. And what we're saying to ourselves in our dialogue is so much more than what comes out of our mouth. And it's not only to do with verbal language. A verbal language is such a tiny portion of what it is that we communicate in our environment and in our world, that, we have to be conscious about the languages we're speaking, but on multiple levels. I often say that the paranormal and spirits and things like that are, the paranormal kind of speaks a different language, which is one of the reasons why I think people have, especially skeptics and stuff like that, have a hard time with this, because often they're using only the verbal word in order to understand and translate their environment, and that usually it's just not enough. It's not enough. So, yeah, so we're going to get into that, and I'm excited. So it's nice to see everybody. Nice to see Des and Stephanie. Nice to see you. It's so good to, I love watching everybody come in the morning. It's so cool. This is great. So let's break into this, you guys. And when we start to look at, and we have to go right back, because language in and of itself, of course, is such a foundation part of our experience as people, and we tend to rely on our words more often than we rely on our own energy and intuition, which is not always a good thing. Words are a tool. Okay, words are really a tool to express the energy that we want to put out into the world. It's a quick and clear, or it should be a quick, clear communication to other people, to the world, about things that either we're thinking, feeling, ideas we want to communicate, but oftentimes it's not. And when we're not existing and moving in integrity with who we really are, and with that non-physical, that source energy, whatever you want to call it, and we're not being who we are, that communication starts to get skewed, and it gets skewed on a number of different levels. Not only is it becomes disproportionate to what we're thinking and feeling, as soon as we stop being in touch with who we are and start catering to other things going on in our experience, whether it be things like our, your people that are afraid to get into trouble, people that are, afraid to speak their truth because they fear they're going to be disliked, they don't want to cause a problem. Sometimes it's just a situation where people are so disconnected with who they are that what happens is you just end up not being aware of what you should be communicating at all. And that happens so frequently, and we see it all the time in haunting cases, where people again have these bleeding wounds, emotionally, spiritually, whatever that is. They've got this stuff that hasn't been healed up, and they go into some of these environments, and all of a sudden, bam, you've got, they're getting these crazy hauntings, these negative experiences, and they're not understanding what is happening. They don't understand what's going on. And it's because there is a disconnect between their level of understanding of who they are, that level of integrity, with understanding and healing that emotion, and then turning around and being able to go into an environment and expecting something different. It's one of the reasons, for example, when, someone who isn't feeling remorseful or something like that will come and apologize to you, and they'll say, hey, I'm really sorry, blah 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 blah, and that's exactly what it sounds like. Have you guys ever had that, where you've had somebody come and apologize to you and you just don't feel it? Like, you don't feel it, you can't accept, you just can't accept the apology, because you're like, no, something's just weird. And that's usually why. It's because they're not in sync with that. They're not in sync with that integrity. So, being in sync with that and those words it is so important. So if we take a look at we go back to the Aramaic language, and we start looking at the phrase abracadabra. And most of you people have probably heard it from the Harry Potter series, of course. Avada Kedavra, right? Which is the killing curse in Harry Potter. But that word actually goes back to Aramaic and Hebrew traditions, and it literally means, I will create as I speak. That's what it means. I will create as I speak. And now as I say, this is something that is powerful, because we have to start to learn to speak, to understand how powerful our words really are when we put them out into the world. And this is something that we have to start being able to pay attention to. How is it that we are speaking? What are we speaking? Are we paying attention to what that sounds like? Sally is asking me a question, do I still write music? And yeah, I don't do it as much as I used to. I work with some amazing, amazing composers, and they do it far better than I do. But it's a great, another form of language. It's another form of language. Music, art, all of that are these different forms of language, and oftentimes get points across and get emotions and intention and energy across just even more articulate, with more articulation and more beautifully than language can. So it's very interesting. All are tools to get that energy, those emotions, and that feeling, and that non-physical connection across to the rest of us. So it's really interesting to be able to look at this in terms of paranormal activity, because we have a way of phrasing things as people that tend to be very dramatic when we're dealing with situations that have emotionally affected us. We've talked in previous classes about the idea that our emotions, they're fantastic tools. They're important for our guidance system. We need to be able to be in tune with them. But the difference between having a reaction and then being present in the moment, being able to step back from that reaction, be present, and find that inner space before reacting is so incredibly important. And the more that we find that space, the easier those reactions will end up becoming, and they change. So when we're dealing with hauntings, it's funny to listen to people's language because it tends to get very flowery. And I've noticed that in the current situation with the pandemic as well, where people are talking about, they'll have a birthday party canceled or something like that, and they're devastated that it's canceled. And we have to be really careful about our language, because that event, yes, it's disappointing. Yes, it's, it can be upsetting, but is it devastating? What is devastation? Is maybe, seeing people up, sick in a ICU ward, or being in a burn unit, or losing a child or something like that. In my mind, that is something that correlates with the idea of devastation. Canceling a birthday party is upsetting, it's disappointing, but we have to be very careful about how we are phrasing things right now. Because if we're turning around and saying, oh my God, I'm going to miss my prom, and this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me, if that's your measuring stick about what's the worst thing that's ever going to happen to you, this is a problem. So I had a very interesting conversation yesterday on Facebook about with a woman whose daughter is currently missing her prom and things like that. And the one thing that I was careful to say to her, because her daughter's very upset about that this was going on. And the one thing I was very careful to say to her is that this is an opportunity for us to check in with our language, especially if you've got kids, especially if the kids are, starting to frame their world in this way right now, is to be able to check in and make a point to notice what language you're using. If they're turning around and saying something like, oh my God, having to cancel my event is devastating, let's reframe that. And then take it a step further and start to focus on a solution. What can you do after this is over to create a special experience for yourself? What can you do so that it becomes an opportunity of forward thinking and long vision, rather than turning around and seeing this as something that is the end of the world? Because when something does happen that is important, say for example, say someone in the family is very ill or something like that, they're not going to have the language to understand how to deal with that. And we have to be very careful. When it comes to hauntings, I see this all the time, where clients will come to me and say, this was the most horrifying thing I've ever seen. This is terrifying. I saw, objects move across the room and things like that. And it was just the most awful thing I've ever witnessed. And we have to be very careful about that, because ultimately, is it really the most awful thing you could have possibly witnessed? Likely not. how maybe I was frightened in the moment. That startled me, that was scary, it upset me, all of these different things. And sometimes you can even get to, that was really neat, that was really curious, I've never seen anything like that before, I don't know what to think about that thing. The unknown makes me afraid. Any language like that is a little bit more proportionate into what we want to be using as our dialogue, especially internally. What we tell ourselves is so important. Ultimately, we believe ourselves. We really do. So, if we had a friend who was coming to us and saying, I'm terrified, this is terrible, what would you be saying to that friend? What would you be saying to comfort that friend? It probably wouldn't be, oh my God, this is the most horrible thing that's ever happened to you. That's probably not on your list of comforting phrases. So what would be the point in feeding that energy to yourself? It doesn't make any sense. It's not a kind thing to do. Is it kind? Is it necessary? The odds are it's probably not. So, we can take something like the pandemic seriously. We can take something like, maybe a frightening haunting or something like that seriously without turning around and making it into a dialogue or a story in our minds that is creating an account of something that is just terrifying us to the point of just not being able to sleep or eat or whatever it is. So I really encourage this with things like kids, and being able to use this opportunity right now, to use this as a realization that our language, what we speak, we give life to. Okay, what we speak, we give life to. So what are you saying? What are you coming out with that is connected in that way? Because whatever we're saying, we speak into that non-physical energy. We really do. We speak it. And whatever we are putting out there, that emotion and energy, when we're attached to something with emotion, then that slowly starts to roll into our current environment. So we have to really begin to watch what it is we're talking about. When people have asked me so often, I must need a medium to talk with, any non-physical energies or spirits or God or whatever that is for you. And the funny thing is that people don't realize that they're speaking that language all the time. It's just that, people who are tuned in a mediumship kind of way, tend to be maybe a little bit more conscious of it, and maybe able to still their minds a little bit more. But everything that we are doing, every action that we're taking, every little bit of energy and emotion that we're bringing into our world really is that communication with non-physical. What I've learned is that non-physical doesn't really care where you've been. It really doesn't. It doesn't care where you've been. What it really cares about is where you are and where you're going. So where you are currently to where you want to get to. And that communication, when we are bringing energy into a space, we are allowing that non-physical to start to manifest in our world. And it's not that we might get the exact same thing that we're thinking about. We might not. But we will always get the essence of what we're thinking about. So I see this in paranormal activity all the time, because what ends up happening is that people will, go into a situation where, this negative haunting is starting to occur. They don't know what to do and they're quite frightened about it. And it's that direct reflection, yet again, of what they've got going on within them. That internal dialogue is always reflected back, whether it be a haunting or whether it be with other people, whether it be within our finances, events in our lives, whatever's going on. And we have to begin to become conscious of the language that we are using, which brings me to the to-do, or our process that I want to give you guys today, so you guys can start thinking about this. I've recommended something similar to this before, but I think this is so important, is to be able to start to look at the words that you're using both to yourself, both to the environment, and on a day-to-day basis, by either being able to write them down, whether it be on the computer, whether it be using your journal, or whether it just being sitting still and being conscious of what you're saying to yourself. Listen to yourself. Go back on Facebook, go back on Twitter, go back on, articles maybe that you've written over the years, whatever it is, and take a look at the language. I know a lot of you guys have been really great to journalers and things like that. It's interesting to be able to go back on your old journal entries and see what your language looks like. Are you using catastrophic language? And if so, how is that then reflecting and manifesting, creating in your environment? I can almost guarantee you that there's going to be a correlation. We see this often on, some of the news networks. We see a lot of very flowery language. People saying that, something is going to be they're creating warnings where really they should be just reporting things factually. They're pushing towards opinions and agendas and things like that, and they tend to be very overblown. So we have to be very careful about what we're taking in, how we're hearing it, and are we looking at the facts of the situation, or are we telling ourselves a story about the facts of what's going on? Are we rewriting things in a way that isn't healthy for us? So I think this is something that is really important. And the other thing to look at with this, and we touched a bit on it a few minutes ago, about the idea that there are different types of language. And I said the paranormal speaks a different language, and it really does. I think this is one of the reasons why, as I say, people like, skeptics and things like that are looking for, they're looking to be able to translate a lot of what is going on with the paranormal in a very concrete way, which isn't always a possibility. We are not speaking that language all the time when we're dealing with things like hauntings, with the paranormal, anything like that, or especially things like psi and quantum experiments. If we take a look at something like the double slit experiment, for instance, where the outcome of that experiment depends on whether somebody is observing and what their state of expectation is, whether those, whether we're going to see those light particles as waves, or like waves or particles, whatever those photons are going to turn into. That double slit experiment is such a great example of the fact that not only our state of expectation, but our state of observing matters when it comes to, observing, as whether it be something non-physical, whether it be something paranormal, or whether it be something in our day-to-day lives. If we're just watching things like just watching TV, how we are taking that information in, being able to look at the language that is being not only communicated from us, but what is being communicated to us also. Pay attention to that language. It's so important. When we are, a lot of people will have asked me over the years about things like, how do you speak to non-physical when you're looking for something like closure? What do you do with that? How do you interact with somebody, for example, who has passed away? What does that communication look like? And so often it is based in, first of all, to reach to where they are, you've got to be in that state of joy and passion. It's the only way to do it. That's just where they are. That's what non-physical is. Our natural state of being is joy. And when we get reduced to and return to that natural form of energy, that's where our frequency is. We're hanging out in that vibrational space. So we have to be there. But the times where you can't be, the times where you're just angry as hell at that person, sometimes being able to then speak that truth and shed that energy to a photograph, to a picture of them, so that you can release whatever that is, so you can forgive and keep going. Whatever that language looks like for you, you've got to find it. I know so many people in my life who are musicians, for instance. They're musicians and poets and, artists and all of these different things. And the great thing about this amazing renaissance that the human race has become is that we can find all of these different outlets and languages to be able to convey what it is that we're feeling in a way that isn't reduced to the word. And I mean, the human language is amazing. Verbal language is so important. But at the same time, we have to start being conscious of the fact that we can create and move and change energy in things that aren't, it's not just verbiage. So, art might be that avenue for you. It might be. You never know. But I think we need to start being conscious, because, as I say, the conversation I had yesterday on Facebook was very interesting. The use of the word devastating, I think, is something that we have to be very careful about how and when we are placing that word. Is canceling a birthday party, is canceling a prom or something like that, is that devastating when we think of, the people, especially the people right now who are, sitting in ICU, hanging on and trying to breathe and trying to just get air in their lungs. Is canceling the prom for a couple of months, is that really what we want to consider devastating? And I think we need to start to reframe and rephrase, how we are seeing things like not being able to get haircuts, not being able to go shopping or go to the mall, and start looking at that as opportunity, changing our language about it so that we can get our heads around how we want to move forward. Because ultimately this business about language and how we are phrasing things is going to play a role in how we move past what's going on right now, healing, getting over this. When it comes to health, language is so interesting. Years ago, they did an experiment where they had people who had been diagnosed with cancer draw their tumors. They had them draw their tumors out. And the people, some of the people who had, very relatively large tumors, drew them very small, like a couple centimeters big. And the people, and there was a group of these people who drew them quite large, like it was the whole page, filled the whole page. And that's what they submitted. That's what they owned. And what was so interesting was that the people who drew them very small recovered better than the people who drew them as the entire page of paper. And it shows you just the vastness of how our viewpoint and how our language, whether it be drawing or whatever that is, how it ends up reflecting into our world on a creation basis. We have to start really thinking about this. We think that our words, they just kind of disappear into the ether and don't mean anything. But when we look at cases of health studies and things like that, the people, for example, who are sitting in hope versus the people who are sitting in, hopelessness, the recovery rate between the two, drastically different and drastically faster as well. The people who don't believe they can recover, there's not a whole lot of good hope for that, because if you've got that vision in your head, you will steer towards it. You just will. So that language, whether we've got, whether it be the words and the dialogue in our health, in our being, in our state of mind, or whether it be something that we're drawing out, writing down, whatever it is, our dialogue matters, our language matters. So I want you guys to think about that today. As you're going through, and catch yourselves saying this crazy man. Don't do that. Also, I got a really neat to do for you guys today. I think this is so cool. So the Nottingham Post, I have a good friend who lives in Nottingham, and they decided, because they've got an amazing museum there, and it was actually ranked the 27th most haunted places by higgypop.com. And of course they've closed now because of coronavirus and things like that. But the neat thing is that the owner, Steve Wesson, is actually decided, because they've known this place to be notoriously haunted for ages, they have decided that they are going to live stream constantly the museum, the haunted places in the museum. So you can literally leave this on your computer if you want, and let it go. So they've started from the top of the building, which is the attic, and it's all decked out like a Victorian bedroom. Basically what their suggestion was something based on on a process called the Singapore theory. And the Singapore theory was the idea of, making an environment feel like what these spirits may have known in life, to make them feel more at home. So they very much embraced the idea that this is, that they want these spirits there and create this really happy, comfortable environment. And so that's the Singapore theory. And so they've done this, and they've put in all the cameras. There's the Woodborough Road Museum. There's all sorts of, there's crazy stuff. There's even a torture room and a morgue and a chapel and all sorts of things. And their possessed doll named Martha. So if you want to go see Martha, this is apparently where you go see Martha. But anyway, they're deciding to live stream this. So I'm going to post the link. So you guys, if you want to check it out and you want to just leave it running and see what happens, and whatnot, you can do that. It's just it's just a cool thing to have going and to do. And I think the people of Nottingham are, they're kind of ahead of the curve. I have a good friend there, by the name of Dr. Cal Cooper, and he works in the arena of clinical parapsychology and dealing with the relationship between hope and grief and bereavement. And the work that's being done in Nottingham, in the Northampton University there is really, really cool. It's super cool. They've even got cafes where basically people go and to talk about their loved ones and celebrate the life of their loved ones and things like that. They're so far ahead of things. It's really cool. So anyway, that being said, speaking of language, we can't go into our day without our affirmations because they are so important. They are so important, talking about language. So everybody take a breath. It is natural for my body to be well. Even if I don't know what to do to get better, my body does. I have trillions of cells with individual consciousness, and they know how to achieve individual balance. When this condition began, I didn't know what I know now. I don't need to understand the cause of this illness. I only have to gently, eventually release this illness. It doesn't matter how it got started because it's reversing its course right now. And there's no hurry about any of this. My body knows what to do. Well-being is natural to me. My inner being is intricately aware of my physical body. My cells are asking for what they need in order to thrive, and Source is answering those requests. I'm in very good hands. My only work is to relax and breathe, and I can do that easily. And everybody take a breath. Language, guys. It's all about language, what we're telling ourselves, what we're writing, what we're drawing, what we're painting, what we are listening to when it comes to music and what we're composing, how we're writing about things. Everything is language, and it's a communication with the universe. It's communication with source energy, with whatever you want to call that, God, whatever it is. It is a communication, and it is creating. We are creators. So don't forget that today as we're going into our afternoon and our world. I hope you guys have an amazing, amazing Sunday. Don't forget about also Super Soul Sunday on the OWN network. It's a fantastic show, and if you guys need an uplifting boost or something like that, I highly recommend Super Soul Sunday, which I've talked about in past classes. But anyway, have a wonderful day, you guys, and I will see you tomorrow morning on Spiritual Healthcare, 10 a.m. Mountain Time. Thank you all so much. Send in your topics, send in your questions, because we need them. We need them. So, yeah. All right. Talk to you all soon, and see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.